The protagonist is headed somewhere in a carriage. The girl asks if she is the right fit because the dispenser family wanted to see another daughter-in-law. Her attendant replies that the little lady is suitable. In a few minutes, they arrive at their destination. The servants announce that Lady Raina and Viscountess Evely have arrived. The protagonist is a bit surprised as the estate is so huge. Two young boys welcome Raina to the dispenser family. They point to a young boy with blue eyes. This is Felix, the oldest son of the dispenser family. The protagonist notices that he's very handsome. She realizes he's her husband. A few days ago, a daughter in the Homewood family had an argument with her father. She said her daddy was crazy, for the girl didn't want to marry a viscount. The head of the house, Walter Homewood, gave his daughter a look at some papers. Raina doesn't understand what happened. After all, she had just come in from shopping. Her mother entered the room and pushed her daughter, making the butter fall out of the bag. The girl with amber eyes greeted her mother, but Catherine Homewood just asks the girl why she's in the way. The eldest daughter finishes looking at the papers. She says it doesn't say anything about what kind of girl they'd like to see. Raina's sister tells the protagonist that she will go. The father supports his daughter and says that a letter has arrived with a marriage proposal from Viscount Dispenser, for which they are promised a lot of money. The little girl doesn't really like that idea. Times change, aristocrats go bankrupt, titles are devalued due to budget constraints. Where there's demand, there's supply. Viscount Dispenser has made his proposal. But a title is not a matter of society's opinion, it has to be earned. Nobility is an innate quality. A family that bought a title with money doesn't fit into society. In the end, to become true aristocrats, they ask for the hand in marriage of the Earl's daughter. Raina cries out that she doesn't want to do that. As useful as she was, there wasn't enough money in the house even for food, so the girl starved, but kept trying her best. And in the end, they just want to get rid of her. The Countess says that they can't send Raina there. The protagonist is very upset and thinks that her mother doesn't want to send her there. Catherine says that if her daughter leaves, they will have to hire a maid. The little girl supports her mother in her thoughts and asks here to get angrier she doesn't want to leave. Walter gives a couple of papers to his wife and says about the honor of the letter more carefully. Catherine is indignant because her husband is going to sell their daughter for a pittance. She says that whatever the amount, she refuses. But when she sees the round sum, she changes her mind. The father says it's 5,000 florins. The Countess realizes that with this money, they will live luxuriously for the rest of their lives, just like in the old days. She puts her hands on Raina's cheeks and says that the little girl must go there and solve all their problems. She asks the girl to be patient for the good of the family. She can, after all. The mother tells her daughter not to be selfish. Raina is a little upset by such words. Her mother thinks how she could give birth to such damage. The Countess tells her daughter to repay her family who didn't leave her on the streets. If the girl marries, she will pay back all her sins and become a useful child. The main character has been wanting to hear this for a long time, but she is not very happy. Catherine, having finished her speech, turns away from her daughter and tells her to prepare food and asks her older sister where Maurice is. She answers that he will come at lunchtime and asks if she will now have a collection of gorgeous dresses. The mother replies that of course she will, and also shoes and jewelry. Raina is outside the door hearing all this. Tears do not stop the girl's face. She is very upset. The golden-haired lady realizes that she is no longer part of this family, and no one even thinks about her. A week later, the Dispenser family arrives at Homewood Manor. Catherine thinks she can't give in to petty, deceitful nobility. She tells them that they have traveled a long way to their home and must be tired. The protagonist doesn't notice that he doesn't see Maurice anywhere. Viscountess Evely Dispenser, thank this countess for consenting to this marriage. Raina sees the Viscountess and wonders if she should bow, but her mother leads the woman away. The main character is left alone. She realizes that her family is just selling her to the Dispenser family, and the wedding is just a formality. The girl does not even know who will be her husband. If she says she went to them because Roxy wanted her to, it makes more sense. Obviously, her sister would be pissed if she didn't go. They'd have to cancel the wedding. Suddenly, Raina is called out by her mother. She hugs her daughter and tells her to treat the Viscountess with respect. She tells her daughter to live a decent life. The protagonist wants to say something to her mother, but she tells her daughter to go. The girl picks up her suitcase. Us, the servant, is asked to let him carry the lady's suitcase. The protagonist is a little embarrassed and says that it is not necessary because it is light and runs away. She wonders what she expected from her mother. Evilly calls the protagonist for the third time, and when the girl asks what is wrong, the Viscountess tells her to choose whether she is more comfortable riding in a carriage or a car. The little girl points out that she is more comfortable riding in a carriage. The woman smiles and says that she likes the classics better too. Maurice, the oldest son of the Homewood family, runs outside and sticks to the car, looking at it. The boy asks his father if it's really worth it for them to buy one for themselves. The protagonist looks at her brother and realizes that he didn't come out to say goodbye to her. Felix's gaze is directed at Raina. The eldest daughter of the Homewood family looks at the guy and wonders if all the men in the family are so handsome. In any case, it does not concern her, so the girl returns to the house. There, her father and mother discuss the amount of money they have been given. Catherine says that they were paid even more than they were promised. Walter says that his wife is gorgeous. The kid complains on the way home that he's cramped. The older brother says that's why he asked the boy not to go and asks why he has to go. The boy replies that everyone is going. Of course, he has to go too, as the youngest member of the family. He asks if Felix should go in the carriage. The elder brother says he must have been sent to them, for he is as tall as a bower and shows no emotion. He says Felix would frighten Lady Raina. The guy wasn't very happy about those words. He looked away and wondered if that was the problem. The girl was so shy all the time. Remembering her facial expression, Felix thought that that gesture was really adorable. When she arrives at the building, she is surprised by its enormity. She wonders if she will be able to finish cleaning the mansion. She thinks that this family is rich, and maybe she will not clean it alone. The Viscountess turns to the little girl and says that everyone is already waiting in the parlor, so they should go. When the protagonist steps on the threshold of the house, she notices that everything there is so expensive, but concerns that she can break something, even accidentally. But the girl tries to push away from herself such thoughts. The Viscount greets Lady Raina with a kind smile and says his name is Alex. He is the owner of Dispenser Mansion. The man points to his son and claims that he is the lady's future husband. Raina notices that the boy is very handsome. Alex continues his story and says that the blue-eyed boy is the eldest son of the Dispenser family. The little girl meets his gaze but immediately averts her eyes, afraid, making Felix's face darken a little. The father puts his hand on his son's shoulder and asks if he can handle it. Felix starts listing all the members of the family. Eden is the second oldest son. Joffrey is the youngest. The boy is about to introduce his mother, but she interrupts her son and says to call her Evely. The family sits down around the table, and the girl feels the stares and thinks that everyone is staring at her. The girl feels the eyes on her and thinks that everyone is staring at her, and she feels uncomfortable as hell. The Viscountess notices this, and in her mind orders her family not to look at the girl. She says that Rihanna must be as tired as they are. The woman offers to talk about the family later. She looks at her sister-in-law with a soft gaze and suggests we talk about the marriage ceremony first. The protagonist agrees. Evely states that they will hold it in 2 years, but for now, the guys can consider themselves engaged to each other. She says that she plans to have a simple wedding ceremony with her family. Maybe the little girl thinks that 2 years is too long, but it's enough. Raina has already come to the conclusion that this is definitely a test, and if she fails to do her job, she will be thrown out of the mansion. She thinks she needs to try harder. She wonders what they should call themselves now. The girl apologizes and says that in that case she will go to her room first. She gets up from the couch and heads to her room. When Rihanna leaves the room, the oldest son of the family immediately becomes indignant. He says it's taking too long. 6 months, at most a year. Well, his mother tells that one not to start taking, he won't like the girl. The guy doesn't know what his mother is talking about, but she asks him if he thinks he's going to love her. Evelyn agreed to this wedding because it was the only decent way to take Raina away from her family, but the woman doesn't want their wedding to take place when the little girl hasn't fallen in love with Felix yet. The Viscountess claims the girl didn't come here of her own free will. They paid her family and ransomed her. Felix sits down on the sofa and turns to his mother. He states with a serious face that it is not necessary to talk about it so directly. She asks in her mind if her son is in a hurry too. Evelyn remembers the first time she saw the golden-haired girl. That time when she saw how brightly the little girl's smile shone, she said she wanted to adopt her. Another woman replied that this was Lady Raina Homewood, and she was very happy that the girl was visiting their orphanage. The Viscountess asks her to forgive her for being rude and claims that this girl has an incredibly beautiful smile. Now, looking at her family, Evelyn hopes Raina can be there happily, but if not, the Viscountess touches the mug in her hands, then they will follow her plan. She asks her son in her mind to try to win the girl's heart. But he has a puzzled look on his face and wonders if Raina remembers anything about him. The Viscount is very disappointed because only his wife can talk to Raina, and he also wants to be friends with her. The man holds a note in which he asks the girl if she would prefer to call him father, daddy, or papa. He would prefer the last option, but he asks her not to call him Viscount. Suddenly, the girl wakes up in the middle of the night. She gets out of bed and thinks what time it is, putting on her house slippers. She doesn't understand why the alarm clock didn't ring and realizes that her mother will scold her. In the second she was standing in the middle of the room, she realized that this was not her home. It seems that the girl has slept so long for the first time since she was 12. The little girl thinks she should hurry to the kitchen, so she heads in her direction and enters the room. There, Raina is met by one of the workers, who is very surprised to see the girl and asks why the lady is here. The other workers do not understand who it is. The woman explains that it is the same girl about whom the gentleman told. She has recently arrived at their mansion. The women workers surround the girl from all sides and ask if it is really her. One by one, the women begin to introduce themselves. One of them says that her name is Marie. She is a chef. Marie asks if something is wrong because the girl came to the kitchen so early. The main character asks if there is anything she needs to do. She enthusiastically begins to list all her skills. She can bake bread, cook stew, and clean well. The worker is puzzled by these words and claims that the lady doesn't need to do anything here. Raina is upset because she thinks that if she doesn't do anything, she will be kicked out. But she doesn't want to go back to her old family, where no one loved the golden-haired lady. The little girl grabs her apron and shrieks that she will find something to do herself. The main character prepares all the ingredients and starts cooking. With her little hands, she takes a bowl and breaks a few eggs, then adds all the other ingredients and prepares breakfast. When it was time for dinner, Raina stood near the table. The Viscount asked her why she was standing there, and Felix pulled out a chair for the protagonist and told her to sit down next to him. The protagonist was not used to this. She thought that if they offered to eat together, she could not refuse. The guy asks if the girl wants milk or tea and what she likes better. Raina asks for milk. Felix, with a slight blush on his cheeks, says okay, and the young lady thanks him. Alex looks at the table and notices a new dish. He asks what it is. The protagonist claims that she cooked it herself, and if the Viscount doesn't want to eat it, it's okay. The whole family grabs forks. The father realizes he's the first to grab a fork and is already celebrating his victory, but someone ruins his plans by sticking a fork into the dish. It is the youngest son. Alex bends his fork in his hands in anger, but the little guy is not embarrassed. He compliments Raina by saying that the dish is delicious. The Viscount tells his son to stick to the family rules and orders Felix to take the fork away from him. Evelyn says the dish is delicious. The protagonist hears this with a warm smile on her face and says that next time she will cook for everyone, but the Viscount says she shouldn't. Raina remembers her brother Maurice, who was quickly bored with her food, but eats more delicious food than her omelet every day. Alex claims that he didn't bring the girl here to make them breakfast. She doesn't have to do it if she doesn't want to, but the Viscount would like Raina to give him a dish for his birthday that she cooked herself and asks if she can. The youngest son shrieks that he wants to do that too. Eden claims his brother always uses his youngest child in the family ploy. Raina is very touched by such words. She smiles and a few drops of tears show through her golden lashes. After some time, Alex asks his son how things are with Duke Cornwall, but he coldly replies that it is too early to say anything. The Viscount says he is also interested in the trial. Felix replies that if anything goes wrong, he will inform his father. The Viscount, noticing his son's reaction, wonders why he is angry and asks if Eden is getting ready too. Felix says yes. He looks at the empty plate and gets angry because his wife made breakfast, and he is the only one who didn't even taste it. Raina just sits back and watches the whole thing. The Viscountess speaks and Joffrey says that his first day of school is coming up. The boy isn't too happy about it. He covers his ears with his hands, claiming he knows and asking how much longer he can talk about it. The protagonist sits at the table and thinks that everyone in Homewood has eaten. Without uttering a word, she clenches her small hands and wonders if she will ever be able to join their conversation. She asks Raina if she has eaten. The main character replies that she has eaten. Then the Viscountess suggests that she go and rest for a while. Raina asks how the cleaning is going, but then shifts her head and says, "Okay." The girl heads for the door. When she grabs the handle and wants to leave the room, Evely asks the main character if she would like to meet for a cup of tea at lunchtime. The golden-haired lady is surprised by such a request, but after a second, she replies well with a smile and bows goodbye. Alex feels abandoned and asks what about him, but his wife says he can't, because this is a strictly female meeting. The Viscountess notices that her husband has become so grumpy in recent days. The Viscount continues his speech and says that he often goes to tea ceremonies with Evelyn and that he still hasn't even spoken to Raina. Avery realizes that he is the first to talk about accepting her into the family. There is nothing wrong in the fact that he wants to have a daughter. The Viscount tearfully pleads with his wife, who thinks that the older he gets, the more he behaves like a child. As Raina strolls down the hallway, the maid shows her where the ladies' room and the others are. The protagonist notices that there are so many beautiful objects in the manor, and the rooms are well decorated. The maid says she hasn't introduced herself yet. She claims her name is Jane, and she'll be looking after the ladies' hall. If anything goes wrong, Raina should call her right away. The main character says that there is no need to worry about her. The maid does not understand what her mistress is talking about because it is her job. The golden-haired lady notices this and excitedly says that if she needs anything, she will definitely turn to Jane. Someone knocks on the Viscountess's door, and it turns out to be Raina. Evely tells the girl to come in and apologizes because she still has some things to sort out, so she tells the protagonist to treat herself first. She asks if the girl likes her room because the Viscountess tried to please, but she does not know what is now fashionable among young girls and says that the golden-haired lady can decorate her room herself as she wants. Raina, on the other hand, says she likes everything, although the closet is a little weird. Evely says that there must be some mistake. She thinks about it for a while and says that the girl is right. Instead of a closet, there should be a dressing room. But on the other hand, there is too little space for a dressing room. But the main character stops her and says that's not what she's talking about. There's just too much stuff in the closet like it's another person's room. The golden-haired lady thinks that these things are so beautiful, and she would like to wear them for a while. The Viscountess laughed at that answer. She claims it was a gift for Raina. Cloaks from Alex, elegant things from Felix. Eden gave a beautiful dress, and lovely handbags and jewelry from Joffrey. Evely, with a soft smile on her face, states that everyone has their own preferences and is always curious to see who has prepared what. The protagonist thanks the lady, but she says that they were preparing for the arrival of the girl together, and she only thanked the Viscountess, which is a bit unfair. Raina thanks the lady once again and calls her mom. Evely is touched by this and smiles warmly with a slight blush on her face. She asks the girl if she wants to talk about the tea ceremony. Raina almost cries at the thought that she is really welcome here. The Viscountess asks the golden-haired lady if that's what you wanted to do. Times have changed. Now girls need to be able to live on their own, too. The main character remembers that she has a wedding in 2 years. Just 2. She wonders if she'll be kicked out in 2 years, or if her new mom means that the girl should start preparing for it now, to be able to support herself even if they don't want her in their mansion. The two girls continue to talk. Evely asks if Raina has studied something, but she says that she has only studied the basics of history. The woman replies that she personally would like to study philosophy and psychology, and it would be nice to learn to draw or play a musical instrument. The Viscountess is already imagining how she would go to museums and theaters with the girl, but the woman sees that Raina's face has darkened. She tells her daughter that she doesn't have to study if she doesn't want to. Evely just wants her to know the basics. The Viscountess has made many enemies. If the golden-haired girl goes out into society without an education, she will be abused and bullied. The woman tells Raina that she is not asking her to decide anything right now, but she wants the girl to have experience, and most importantly, to find something she really likes. The protagonist says that she agrees. Then her mother suggests to end the tea ceremony because the girl is probably tired, so I should go inside and rest a little. The golden-haired lady simply agrees and bows to Evely as she leaves the room. The Viscountess is left alone in the room and thinks she knows the girl's situation and understands her pain. She has been watching Raina for a long time, and so she doesn't want her to feel uncomfortable. Evely thinks it would be best to talk to the girl. The main character goes to her room and sits on her bed. She reflects on her past family. Roxy had a private tutor, and Maurice went to the royal school. The golden-haired lady gets a little upset at the thought that these two are so smart, while she can only read. The girl recalls her now mother's words about what she wants to do. The girl in the past family's estate was tired after work, and her free time was only spent sleeping. She ponders whether it would be better if she read books during this time, and even if she studies, whether she will be able to catch up. The main character remembers her sister. She lies down on a soft bed, and before her eyes there is a picture of Roxy in black lace gloves playing the piano. The little girl at the time was scrubbing the floors in the room where her sister's tutoring session was taking place. She realizes that she also wants to learn to play this musical instrument. The maid knocks on her mistress's room and says it's time for dinner, but the girl doesn't answer. Raina is lying on the bed, all red. The maid rushes to the dining room and informs them that Lady Ryan is very ill. The mother immediately turns pale and orders Joshua to be called. When the doctor arrives, he examines the girl, at which time the Viscountess says that it's all her fault. You've been pushing Raina too hard. She's already crying and says the girl shouldn't do anything. Joshua is the Dispenser family doctor, now a little puzzled. The guy drove all the way from home. He was called in the middle of dinner. The servant came running to him and told him that the young lady was in a critical condition. The doctor already thought that he would have to live on 2 houses. On the way, the servant asked if the boy had been notified of Felix's wedding. Joshua realized that the girl was Felix's fiancée, but they were only engaged, and apparently no one was going to call the doctor to the wedding. When he got out of the carriage to say hello to Alex, he only looked at him and immediately pulled him away by the arm. And here he is. The doctor looks at the couple and you think they've been like this for hours, even though he's been explaining to them that it's a simple cold. Joshua led the way as the Viscountess cried, remembering that they hadn't cried even when Eden had measles. The cold is dangerous in some ways, of course. The doctor informs the Viscountess that Raina's weight and skin condition indicate a lack of nutrition. The guy says to order that the medicine and supplements be given and shipped tomorrow. He reiterates that it's just a cold. The family shouldn't worry. Joshua heads back to his house. In the evening, Felix comes to the sick girl's room. He pulls back a chair near the bed and sits in it, looking at the sleeping girl. He remembers the old days. 4 years ago at the orphanage, 2 boys were looking for their brother. They were wandering through the woods and calling out his name. Suddenly, they saw their brother with a golden-haired lady. She was taping up the boy's wound with a Band-Aid and telling him to treat it properly, and everything would be fine. Joffrey thanked the main character. The 2 guys said they owed the girl a debt of gratitude, and she asked if the guys knew the kid. Eden replied that they knew him well. They came to the kindergarten as volunteers, and this kid ran away from them. They were looking for him for a long time, and the girl helped them with the search. The heroine replies that it's no big deal, and the blonde says that since she's here, she could show them the way back. While looking for Joffrey, they both get lost. Eden claims they took a wrong turn. The golden-haired lady lets them go with her since she was just returning. Back at the orphanage, the girl treated the wound and told the boy that he was now completely healthy. He looked at his wound and said that it didn't hurt anymore. Raina tells Joffrey, if he comes to volunteer in the future, to be careful when he goes into the woods with the children, because there are lots of rocks, and if you go too far, you can run into snakes. The boy cries out that he will be careful from now on. His brothers remember how he ran away because he didn't want to do volunteer work and got lost. A trio of children ran out of the other room, and when they saw Raina, they happily ran up to her and offered to play together. The protagonist agreed. She said she would set up the medicine and come back. One of the boys came up to Joffrey and asked if he wanted to play. Eden was also swarmed by children. One of the boys came up to Felix and said that he could play too, and with some awkwardness, he replied well. The golden-haired lady noticed this and told the boy that the blue-eyed boy would help her lay out the medicine and they would join her later. Felix didn't remember promising to help her, but he didn't mind. The main character wrung out a towel and put it on the boy's forehead. She said it was a good antipyretic and he would feel better quickly. The boy didn't understand how Raina knew he was sick. The girl said that it is always noticeable when a person hides the pain. She also noticed that Felix's cheeks were getting hot. The guy thought he hadn't blushed until now. The golden-haired lady claimed that after half an hour in bed, he would feel better. She also assured the boy that he shouldn't worry because she would tell the others that they were sorting out the medicine together. The children from the yard started calling Raina and asking if she was coming. The main character said she would come wake Felix up in about half an hour and wished him sweet dreams. The boy thanked Raina. He had a ticklish feeling. After that, something happened to the girl, and he was awakened by the Mother Superior. Felix visited the orphanage many times, sometimes under the guise of sponsorship or service, and by some miracle, he kept coming back to the place. It was quite some time before he was able to see the golden-haired lady again. Joffrey was very happy to see Raina, but too much time had passed, and the protagonist didn't recognize them. At first, both guys were very upset, but the younger brother quickly pushed away the sad thoughts and said that there was nothing wrong with it, because if Raina didn't recognize him, then he had grown up. He argued that it was a good thing that the girl didn't remember the times he'd cried like a baby. To be honest, Felix was disappointed, but whether Raina remembered him or not, her kindness to him hadn't changed. The boy vowed to do his best to thank her. To think he hadn't even noticed Raina was sick. Felix hears a muttering and looks at the girl's bed. The same girl is lying flushed. When a girl just wakes up, she notices that she has a headache and remembers that she felt sick. The main character has never had a cold before. She starts looking around the room and notices a guy sitting next to her. She mentally asks how long he has been sitting there, and more importantly, why. The main character's stomach rumbles, and Felix notices it. He asks if the girl is awake. She answers that she is not. The future husband of the girl puts his hand on her forehead to check whether it is hot or not. Luckily, the fever has broken. It's the first time someone worries about the golden-haired lady, so she is a little embarrassed. The guy asks Raina if she is hungry and says he will bring her something from the kitchen. The girl jumps up from her seat and says she doesn't need to, but the guy is already heading for the door and says he'll be right back. He leaves the room, leaving the golden-haired lady alone. She realizes that Felix will be back quickly with those long legs. The girl notices that all her clothes are sticky and wonders if she sweated so much in her sleep. The kitchen is on the first floor, and the protagonist decides to clean herself up before the guy comes back. Felix, walking down the corridor, thinks what is the best thing to bring his future bride? Maybe a glass of warm milk, or maybe a cup of hot tea is better to relax. The guy turns around, thinking that it is better to ask the girl what she prefers. He opens the door and doesn't see the main character on the bed. The guy starts looking around the room for her with his eyes. He saw the girl trying to change her clothes. Raina was shocked that Felix had returned so quickly. There was a very loud scream. It was Felix. The golden-haired lady didn't understand why she was screaming like that. The boy's brothers came running in at the scream and scolded him. Eden asked his brother what he had done and said it was the end of him, while the younger ones asked him if he had really done it and if he was a pervert. The doctor arrives at the manor in the morning. He says that the injection may cause burning and asks the girl to be patient for a while. Even if she had already taken the medicine, She should always take it with her, and I should take it on an empty stomach. Joshua spoke to the lady gently like a child. The girl assures me she's almost well. The doctor says he'll keep an eye on her for a while. A viscountess enters the room with a set. She asks Raina if she is bored sitting in the room. The woman says that she has squeezed some lemon juice for the girl because vitamin C is good for the body. Evely asks if she can be with Raina. The doctor says yes, but not for too long. She is not fully recovered yet. The protagonist goes to her mother's office, and there they have a tea party. The girl likes the tea. She says that the lemon is sweet. The viscountess says that she heated it with honey to make it easier to drink and asks if the golden-haired lady likes it. The main character replies that it's very tasty. She has been very sick for the last few days, but everyone was very kind to her. They advised her to eat something high in calories. Eden tells the girl to be careful and notices that she looks a little better today. The younger brother apologizes and says he should have been more careful. He clenches his fists with a serious expression on his face and states that he will make sure that the girl does not regret coming into their family. Her mother said that Rihanna shouldn't do anything. The main character can't just sit still when they care about her so much. The golden-haired lady asks her mom about what she said the other day. The viscountess asks if the girl is talking about studying, and she replies that she will do it, make every effort to catch up. Evely says it's okay if the baby doesn't try too hard. All health comes first. The main character says that she is very ashamed. She doesn't know anything, so she wants to try. The girl wants to be part of their family and is not ashamed of herself. She says with a light in her eyes that she wants to be proud of herself in the future. The viscountess smiles and thanks Raina. At this time in Flat Hill, Felix is sitting with a glass of wine. He hasn't been home since that day. The guy doesn't know it was for business, but he'll have to apologize to Raina when he gets back. Guy can't believe he just walked in without knocking. Felix is approached by his friend and asks when he's back. The guy immediately realizes whose voice it is. It's Lloyd Cornwall, the Duke. He says he heard his friend had to spend a lot of money. Felix thinks rumors, however, spread quickly, though it would be strange if rumors didn't spread after such a large purchase. It's a pleasure to spend the money from the sale of his daughter to the Viscount. Even though it was a calculated purchase, the status of these aristocrats was always close to bankruptcy, as the spouses of this family were generously endowed with greed, stupidity, and avarice. Plus the eldest son, Maurice Homewood, the stupidest of all fools, without a shred of empathy or compassion. The only one worth paying attention to is Roxy Homewood. She is always gorgeous, but treats Raina with disdain and has no pity for people. The average of all the debutantes is the least known about her. The Duke asks his friend if this is too much money for the dispensers. He asks his friend if he regrets it, and if not, if something has happened. He says Felix is a man after all, and the Viscount says he could go blind. The Duke says the feather does it because he knows he likes it. Lloyd asks if he understands correctly that Felix is not going to tell him about his wife. Before the boy arrived, the Duke had heard a rumor that he'd quit his job. Felix says he doesn't know what his friend is talking about, but the Duke says he'll find out if the boy isn't going to tell him and asks if he doesn't mind. Felix is not very happy to hear such words. A boy with long white hair comes up behind them and asks what the Duke is going to find out and if he will stop harassing Prince Felix. Lloyd rejoices at the arrival of a friend. The white-haired guy asks if he's too late. It's Count Aaron of The Hague. He's been following Lloyd around since the Royal Academy. Felix remembers that that's when his life began. His friends continue to talk, one of them claiming that if the rumors were directly from the Earl of Homewood, it would be strange. The second says that the incomparable Felix should stand in line to raise his status as handsome, well-mannered, educated, talented, head of the first department of the Royal Academy. There is no such thing as a Viscount, although at first glance it seems intimidating, but in fact he is very much a studious young man. If all the daughters of this world knew about him, there would be a new ocean, an ocean of tears. Felix doesn't understand what these two are carrying, but they just keep laughing and asking if their friend will beat them right during the Forgiveness Festival. Felix states that the two of them have a lot to discuss, and he'd better go. The Duke suggests they talk about work and asks if their friend is really leaving. His face darkens a bit at the thought that they don't seem close enough to talk like that. The Count claims that their friend hasn't changed at all since childhood. Upon reaching the Festival of Forgiveness, Felix notices that quite some time has passed. Reina is in the mansion. I will compliment that this time the picture she painted is just beautiful. The main character asks if it's true. Her mother replies that it is, and she wants that painting for herself too. The girl says that the fall landscape also seems to be very beautiful. The golden-haired lady asks if she will show her mother the study if she draws it even better. Avery says that the girl's drawings show a lot of her family's influence, but the lady has a feeling that Reina has had a falling out with Felix. She asks what happened between them. He went to Flat Hill and hasn't come back yet. In that case, they can't announce their engagement. The main character recalls those events that happened not so long ago, answers that they did not quarrel. After that day, they never met, whether the guy was so offended by Reina's reaction. The Viscountess says that the engagement isn't set yet, but asks the girl to remember that she's already dispenser anyway. Evely says she has something for her daughter. It's unknown when the engagement will take place, so she decided to present it now. The protagonist sees that even the box looks expensive. She claims that her mother already gave her a lot. Especially Joffrey has given her so many gifts, she can't even express the gratitude she feels. The boy said he was happy to give these gifts to Reina and asked her to accept them. But the jewelry that they want to give her now looks very, very expensive. The golden-haired lady tries to refuse because it's so expensive and she thinks she doesn't deserve it. The Viscountess says that it is a family jewel, blessed blue. The girl does not need to be shy and just accept it, because she, although not yet engaged to Felix, is already a member of their family. The golden-haired lady says she'll treasure it. Evely says that it should fit the girl perfectly and thinks of Felix, because he must return before the festival. The woman remembers receiving a message from Reina's house. Her mother and older sister had promised to visit them before the festival. The girl is not very happy about this news, because with these people she has not the best memories. Evely tries to calm the girl down. Her parents said they would stop by for a while before the festival, but if she doesn't want to, the Viscountess will refuse them. The main character remembers her sister, and it's as if she's going back in time. If the people here find out who she was in her ancestral home, will they continue to consider her part of their family? The golden-haired lady is very scared to even think about such a thing. Evely says that although the engagement is not official yet, but after her arrival here, Reina has become dispenser since she is already a member of their family. The protagonist gains courage from these words because she really doesn't belong to the Homewood family anymore. Now she is Reina Dispenser, so it's all good. Sometime later, the Countess of Homewood and her daughter arrive at Dispenser Manor. The Viscountess welcomes them and says she is delighted to see them. Catherine says that she should be the one to welcome them. They are so welcoming that the Countess does not even know how to be. Evely says that Countess Homewood has also come to see Reina. She asks if they have decided to visit their daughter on their way to the capital. Catherine claims that she is, but she doesn't see her anywhere and asks where her daughter is. The Viscountess replies that Reina is preparing for the festival, but she will arrive soon, so there is no need to worry. Roxy smirks and thinks the girl is hiding from them on purpose. It's spring, and there's only one reason why no invitation has come yet. There's no wedding in sight. It seems that the golden-haired lady is trying hard to hide her dirty, ugly nature, but who will believe her? The sister of the protagonist cannot wait to see what became of the sissy, who all day long only cleaned the house in the end. Reina could never change. A few minutes later, the golden-haired lady comes out to the guests in a beautiful pink dress. Roxy looks angrily at her sister because she did not expect that the girl could change so much. The mother sees her daughter. The woman even choked on her tea and almost didn't recognize her child. Reina asks how they are doing, but her sister says that she has come just in time. She points her finger at the mug and orders the girl to make her tea and milk. She thinks of the main character as kitchen maid Reina, but the older sister can't accept the fact that Reina is no longer a maid. She argues that the girl has always done it and she should have no trouble doing it now. The Viscountess said that it was not necessary, and if the young lady wanted tea, she could ask the servant for it when he came. Reina is very touched by this. Now she understands what it feels like to be loved and protected by a loved one. She says it's okay because they are her guests, and it's the least she can do for them. The older sister smirks and thinks that no matter how much Reina looks like, she'll have to serve her more. The girl says it out loud. Catherine is surprised at her daughter's impudence. But Reina's older sister is not embarrassed. She goes out into the corridor without a word. As Roxy walks down the corridor, she is immersed in her own thoughts. She notices that the house is beautifully decorated, and she thinks that it would be interesting to know what Reina is hiding from them. She approaches Jane and orders her to take her to the golden-haired lady's room. The maid says that even though the girl is a guest, it's a bit difficult to get into the younger mistress's room. The older sister slaps the maid without hesitation and says that the people there don't know their duties at all. She asks how the green-haired girl dares to contradict her and says she won't say it twice. Jane takes her older sister to her mistress's room, asking if the maid had brought her to the right room. The room was not as Reina's older sister had imagined. She thought that the girl was living like a gray mouse in a box again. The maid states that everything is just as she asked, and if the girl looked at the room, she asks her to go from there. Roxy looks around the room and sees that Reina has even hung the curtains. She starts going through the clothes closet. The girl pulls out one of the dresses and frantically wonders if it was bought for her sister. Her eyes fall on the top drawer of the table, and Roxy decides to look there too. She pushes it away, and inside she sees a precious box. Opening it, the girl has only one question: why her sister hides such beauty. After the guests leave the house, the Viscountess feels a little tired and says that they are definitely not the kind of guests you want to see again. Reina says that she is very grateful to her mother and that they were even able to see them off without incident, because as soon as Roxy returned from the hallway, she told her mother that it was time for them to go. Catherine didn't understand why they had to leave so soon, but she didn't argue. Evilly strokes Reina's head and says that now, when she looks at the girl, she sees only the worthy Mistress Dispenser. She thanks the main game not for her patience and says she did a great job. At this time, her sister is riding in the carriage with the stolen jewelry. When the golden-haired lady comes to her room, she sits down at the table. The girl thinks she almost fainted when she entered the room. She decides to look in the drawer where the necklace and earrings should be, but there is nothing there. She calls Jane and asks if she cleaned her room yesterday. The maid says that Mistress Evilly told her not to disturb her when she came into the room. Her mistress immediately fell asleep on the bed. The girl asks if anyone came into her room. The maid falls to her knees and begs her mistress to spare her. Honestly, yesterday a guest asked to come into her room, Reina. Thinking what kind of guest it was, she tells her maid to just not tell anyone about it. The main character heads outside. Standing near the roses, she remembers that Jane's cheek is swollen. Roxy must have slapped her for disobedience, as she used to do to the golden-haired lady. Reina doesn't understand what to do and how to act. Tears roll from her eyes. She asks Evely to forgive her, because she trusted her with her family heirloom. But Reina, she should have been more careful, and she should have guessed that her sister is capable of such a thing. The protagonist thinks what will happen if she does not find the necklace and earrings at all. Eden comes up to the golden-haired lady and offers his handkerchief. The girl wipes her tears with her sleeve. She doesn't know what to say. The guy understands everything and says that she must be lonely here alone. The protagonist would like to say that this is not the case. Eden says if she doesn't want to, she doesn't have to tell. Everyone has days when they want to cry, and today's probably just such a day for the golden-haired girl. So there's nothing wrong with that. Reina started crying again, but now it was with joy. She didn't even notice that her tears were flowing again. The girl thanks Eden because his support has made her feel a little better. She says she'll wash the handkerchief and bring it back. The golden-haired lady asks if the guy knows what a blessed blue is and claims that she lost it today. The guy is shocked at this news. After all, it is a family heirloom. Reina continues her story and says that most likely her precious sister took it. She remembers that if her sister likes something, she'll take it for herself. When her grandmother gave Reina a bracelet with beautiful green stones, Roxy took it away from her, and when she begged her sister to give it back, Roxy only smirked evilly. On the other hand, the girl wants to believe it wasn't her. The protagonist shrinks a bit, but after a second she shrugs those thoughts off and says she has to find the blessed blue. She says she doesn't know if the Homewoods will let her into their house, but even if she asks Roxy directly about the necklace, she won't give it back, as her older sister is. Eden says that to see her sister, the golden-haired lady does not need to go that far. They can meet at a festival in the capital. The main character blushes when she remembers that they will go to the festival, and she almost went to her empty mansion. Reina imagines standing there alone at the door. The guy offers to go together to look for the blessed blue. He blinks at the girl and says that although he is not Felix, he can also help. Eden takes Reina's hand and states that when he asked the girl about what happened, honestly, he was overjoyed when the golden-haired lady said she wasn't crying about her life here. The whole family is worried that it might be hard for her to live alone in a strange place, and if she has any difficulties, Reina can share it with him like she did today. He asks Reina to promise him that she won't cry alone anymore and not to forget that they are a family. Reina blushes at this answer and says that she will do so. The boy sits down at his desk in the evening and writes a letter to someone by the light of a lamp. Not much time later, Felix receives a letter from Eden, who says that he will help Reina, as promised, but asks his brother to keep in mind that in 2 years, her husband could be someone else. Guy is annoyed by this, and his friend reads the paper and says that Guy's brother is partly right. Felix slams his hand on the table and cringes to see if Lloyd realizes what he's even talking about. The Duke tells the brunette to tone it down. He doesn't know what happened between the two brothers, but avoidance is not the answer. Lloyd sneers and says that Felix can continue to sulk, but if he wants to see his bride-to-be, it's time to come out of his den. Reina rides in the carriage with a gloomy expression. Eden sits across from her and excitedly asks if the girl is all right, for she is very pale. The guy says that if it's because they are traveling in a carriage, they can go a little slower. The golden-haired lady says she's just a little worried. She's sure she'll definitely find the blessed blue she asks Evely in her thoughts to forgive her. Even if she gets angry, the protagonist will understand. She even avoided her mother all this time. Eden asks the girl if she's just going to have a nice conversation with her sister. He says she could use a couple of good talking points. The golden-haired lady doesn't know what he's talking about and asks if he's offering to hit Roxy. The guy replies that she should know who she's messing with. He starts showing the protagonist how to do it. You need to clench your palm into a fist and concentrate all the power in it, the golden-haired lady tries to repeat after the guy. Eden compliments the girl that she is much stronger than she looks. The coachman of the carriage notices that the carriage is shaking and asks if Mrs. and Mr. are well. Eden holds Reina's hand and tells her it's okay. He whispers to the golden-haired lady to be careful, because she might hurt herself from the shaking. The main character whisperingly apologizes. The guy lets go of her hand and the girl tries to calm down, because her face is a little red. Eden suggests that the golden-haired man and lady look out the window. They seem to be right on time. The street is full of people. The festival of forgiveness is in full swing. While the girl looks out the window and says that the festival is really great, the boy sighs with relief and wonders if his brother has arrived. Felix tries to seem intimidating, but he's still not a threat. Eden knocks on the wall of the carriage and asks the coachman to stop. Reina asks if they'll get off here instead of at the guest house, because her father and mother must have lost her, and she and her boyfriend could look around later. A blonde man with a smile on his face says that this isn't just the center square, it's the square of the Shepherd Palace. He leads the protagonist out of the carriage by the hand and tells her not to be afraid, because if anything, her brother will be there. It had been about a month since the girl had last spoken to Felix, and it would be awkward to speak to him after a long silence. The guy looks at Reina and notices the reaction of the golden-haired girl and puts his arm around her shoulder and tells her to just try not to think about anything, and he will wait for her here. They say goodbye, Eden sinking into his thoughts. He thinks that the girl seems more upset than excited by the news. The boy wonders what happened between her and his brother, and if the golden-haired lady hated Felix. Coming to the palace, the protagonist sees her sister, who is talking to some guy. Reina does not pay any attention to this, and gathering her strength, steps to the girl who stole such a dear thing for her. She puts her hand on her sister's shoulder and calls out her name. She is sure that Roxy should give back what she stole because she cares about it very much. People around her start gossiping about what's going on at Roxy's place and what kind of girl is standing next to her. The older sister knocks down the younger sister's hand and asks if she's completely crazy. Roxy takes the girl's hand and starts pulling. The protagonist says she will not leave until she gets what is hers. The older sister took a precious item given to her by her mother without asking. Reina treasured the blessed blue very much. Well, the older sister doesn't feel guilty. She starts laughing with the golden-haired lady. The girl doesn't realize how the little girl wants to take the thing away from her. That's what amuses her. Roxy says that it's time for her sister to face the truth. Has she forgotten that only thanks to her older sister has lived a beautiful life, and for that she owes her a debt of gratitude? She asks how Reina dared to come to her like this. The girl takes the earring and waves it in front of the protagonist. She guesses that the Viscountess is not even aware that the golden-haired girl has lost the jewelry she gave her. At the same time, in the mansion, Evely asks his son if he is in his right mind and why he needed to send Reina there, because the child has never been in society. Eden argues that the girl is not a little girl and needs to learn to stand up for herself. Viscountess says that it is inappropriate to say that now, and the guy says that his mother does not need to worry so much. There is a reason why Reina needed to go there. Eden would really like to tell her the truth, but the protagonist asked not to say anything about his mother because she did not want to upset her. The woman sighs and says how can she not worry if something could happen to Reina? Eden thinks that he really wants to be by the girl's side at this moment, more than anyone, but that place is reserved for someone else. The parents continue to resent him for it. They seem to worry too much about the golden-haired girl, since she has only recently joined their family. Roxy and the main character continue to fight. Big Sister says that it was Reina's doing, and she decided to set the dogs on her sister because she was afraid to take responsibility for what she had done. She asks how she managed to steal such a jewel without getting caught. Roxy asks her sister if she's a little braver now. Reina is very angry at such words. She cries out for her sister to watch her tongue. Empty threats will not lead to anything good. The girl asks if Roxy thinks everyone in the world is as evil as she is. Big Sister also gets furious. She asks what little one is doing and if she realizes who she's talking to. Big Sister says she has no respect for her elders. The golden-haired lady says that no matter how hard life is, no matter how expensive things are, and no matter how enviable, not everyone will resort to stealing like her. The enraged older sister throws a wine glass at the girl, but when she looks up, she sees that she has hit the Duke of Cordonal. She realizes what she has done and blushing asks him to forgive her. But the Duke, with a smile on his face, says that there is nothing wrong with it. He loves the color red. The protagonist wonders if he did it on purpose because he couldn't just show up at such a moment. And a moment later, she sees Lloyd winking at her. Roxy apologizes for not saying hello to him earlier. Reina's older sister says he probably doesn't remember her and introduces herself. The Duke remembers the girl and says she's Roxy Homewood. Lloyd asks if she is to be engaged to Dispenser's son. Suddenly, someone Sadie replies that the engagement will not be at his older sister's. The Duke of Cornwall turns around and sees his good friend. Felix puts his arm around his bride-to-be and tells the Duke of Cornwall that Reina Dispenser is his bride. He leans over to the golden-haired lady and tells her that he seems a little late. The guy would have a lot to say to her, but with a glance at Roxy, he says that now seems like a good time for me. A girl looks at this trio and wonders why her sister is hanging around the Duke. Lloyd looks at his friend and the golden-haired lady. He claims that the lovebirds are similar again reunited. And the older sister is happy that at least so met with the blonde, she dreams that even this Reina was not there. The girl with clenched fists turns around and is going to leave because she has nothing else to do there. Reina sees this and shouts for her to stop, but Felix argues that it is better to leave Roxy alone. But the protagonist disagrees and says she has some things to deal with, asking the Viscount to let her finish what she started. Girl runs off, leaving two guys behind, says it must be something important and asks if she's okay. A golden-haired lady runs outside after her sister and shouts her name. Roxy turns around and yells that the girl has had enough of her and asks why she's picking on her. She throws the earring on the floor and shouts for Raina to choke on it because it is already on her throat. Suddenly, the Viscountess appears. She calmly walks over to the jewelry and picks it up. Evely asks if that's what all the fuss is about, which is why their Raina's eyes are wet. The woman looks at the earring and asks if it's the apple of discord and claims that the golden-haired lady doesn't even have a dress. The Viscountess claims that Roxy is determined to get her hands on all the gifts she gave her daughter. Big Sister now realizes that Raina wasn't lying and starts to justify herself. She claims that she didn't take anything and the girl gave it all to her. Evely says that Roxy is not only a thief, but also a liar. The woman says she's seen enough and that all the stolen goods will be at the Pax guest house by noon tomorrow. She puts an arm around her daughter's shoulder and says that she forgives Roxy only because she is Raina's sister. When they leave the palace, the protagonist apologizes to her mother because she should have asked earlier, but instead, she only avoided the woman. The Viscountess says that the girl has really had a hard time. Roxy is furious, walking around the house and throwing the necklace around. The Countess asks what she was even thinking. But the girl does not listen to her mother and asks if she has any idea how much she had to listen to because of this trinket. Not only did she embarrass herself in front of the Duke of Cornwall, but she was shouting at the whole hall, attracting the attention of the guests and embarrassing her. Catherine picks up the gemstone necklace. She doesn't realize what's in it at first, but in a second, she realizes the value of the jewelry. The Countess grabs her daughter by the shoulder with some fear and asks her to tell her that Raina gave it to her. The mother yells at Roxy and tells her to stop acting like an empty-headed fool. The girl asks what her mother is mad about, but she asks if her daughter saw that it says Philip II. He's the Duke of Cornwall's great-great-grandfather, the 17th emperor of their empire. Roxy asks what of it and what he has to do with the dispensers. Catherine calls her daughter stupid and says that Lily was the emperor's lover. Lily, the chosen one of Emperor Philip II, was from the common people. And only 30 years after their death, the connection between the king and a simple girl was known to the people. Before that, some even thought that there was no Lily at all. But no one knew she was from the Dispenser family. No one cared about her last name. Still, rumor had it that she didn't look like a commoner at all. Catherine argues that they should find out more about the Viscount one way or another. He's turned out to be a much more important figure than expected. At this time at the Dispenser estate, the Viscountess asks if the girl realizes what she has done. Alex asks why she is so angry with the child and whether she holds a grudge against her. Cather says she's upset, and the protagonist thinks it's going to be like the last family. But the woman says she's upset that they couldn't do anything to help, while the girl tried to solve everything herself. She asks the golden-haired lady why she didn't tell them, because that's what family is for, to be together at times like this and help each other. The Viscountess calls out to her daughter and encloses her in her arms. She asks the girl not to refuse their help, that it won't hurt anymore, and then they can become much closer. The woman strokes the protagonist on her back. After the end of such tenderness, the protagonist says that she will go to the spouses, tell her to have a good rest. When the golden-haired lady walks out into the hallway, she almost cries again. Suddenly, she hears someone talking from the side. It's her future husband. He says that everything seems to be all right. The main character asks how long he's been here. The guy replies that he was worried about her, so he decided to wait and apologizes for being so unexpected. Raina says with a smile on her face that it's no big deal. Felix tucks a strand of the young lady's hair and asks if they can spend some time together. The golden-haired lady is all red and thinks that would give her a heart attack. He says that he has come such a long way, so it will be great if the girl goes for a walk with him and closes her eyes to the recent misunderstanding. After that, the couple goes to the festival. When Raina smiles, Felix thinks what a clear smile she has. The guy blushes and tries to push those thoughts away. The protagonist notices something and says how pretty it is. She is about to go there, but the brunette grabs her hand and says that the girl seems to have gotten too carried away and forgotten about him. Felix asks if the golden-haired lady would like to hold his hand, taking the guy's hand in hers. She is all red with embarrassment, wondering if he is angry with her. But the girl remembers how the brunette took care of her today and asks herself if this is a good sign. The protagonist sits on a bench. The gifts that Felix bought her are standing next to her. Reina does not notice how her future husband comes to her with cotton candy in his hands. He takes the girl out of her thoughts by putting cotton candy to her cheek. The guy suggests Reina to take a break and holds out the treat. He claims that the girl's eyes are burning. The protagonist says that it's the first time she's ever tasted it. She recalls how she passed with children from the orphanage near the cotton candy stand. One of the guys asked if her sister had ever tasted cotton candy. The golden-haired lady replied that she had, and they started pelting her with questions about her taste. Reina thinks she'll be sure to tell the guys later. The girl takes her first bite and comes to love it. You can tell from her face that the golden-haired lady liked the cotton candy very much. The main character remembers that Felix is sitting next to her. Reina gives him the cotton candy and tells him to help himself. The guy bends over to bite. The protagonist is a little embarrassed by this sight. The brunette, having finished his meal, says that it is too sweet for him and licks the remains of cotton candy on his lips. The golden-haired lady looks away embarrassed and says that she will finish it herself. The brunette is already starting to wonder why he said that. He thinks he needs to be more careful or there might be a misunderstanding. A couple is sitting on a bench with some awkwardness, and the protagonist notices that the atmosphere is a little embarrassing. She wonders if she should ask her something. The girl doesn't know what to talk about, so she asks Felix if he saw everything that time. The guy at first does not understand what his future bride is talking about, but when the realization comes to him, the brunette's face is flooded with paint. He asks if the girl is talking about the incident. Felix starts to apologize, saying that it was an accident and he didn't mean it. The guy realizes he's just making excuses. In truth, when the golden-haired lady was sick, she got out of bed and the brunette asked if she was awake and better. All the girl said was that she needed to make breakfast. Felix didn't understand what the girl was talking about, but she said that before they woke up, they had to cook. The boy saw her crying and cursing herself. He asked the protagonist to calm down, assuring her that everything was fine, but the golden-haired lady's condition touched his soul, and he realized that he wanted to take care of the girl. Felix regrets acting so carelessly and is very afraid of hurting her even more when Reina pretends that everything is fine. He looks at his companion and thinks he should apologize now. He claims that he should have apologized earlier, but he ran away like a complete fool. The guy claims that he was just afraid that the golden-haired lady would start hating him, and because of that, he couldn't apologize earlier. The brunette thinks that if they had been honest with each other then, they would have been overcome, and their conscience would not have tormented them. Reina reaches out to her future husband, asks her to forgive her for running away too, and thanks him for his honesty. Felix touches the protagonist's hand and thinks it's impossible not to fall in love with her sincerity. Reina thinks of following the brunette, or else thinks of how he will hold the girl's hand while they go to the festival. They head off to the festival together. When the main character enters the house, she is met by the youngest son of the dispenser family. He hugs his sister and says that he missed her very much. Golden-haired lady tells the guy to at least give him a look. It's only been 15 days, and Joffrey has grown so big. The boy asks if the girl really thinks so. He even seems to have gotten taller than her. The boy claims that at this rate he might become Rhaena's date at the next event. The protagonist notices that Joffrey is still the same child at times like this. Eden grabs his brother by the scruff of the neck and tells him to leave Rhaena alone because the girl is already dizzy with him. The youngest son is angry and asks if he's making her dizzy. He claims that, unlike some, he is really sincere in his feelings. Eden calls his younger brother a bedbug and says he's too young to be a beau. The golden-haired lady leaves with the Viscountess and her son. Felix turns to Eden and says that of course he understands their compassion, but this feels like a challenge. He recalls his brother sending that letter and seeing his bride-to-be off in a carriage. Eden asks how he could leave the golden-haired lady in trouble, And besides, someone else helped her. Felix immediately thinks of the Duke of Cornwall, and he feels uneasy. The middle brother claims that if this continues, someone else may take his place. The brunette says he doesn't even know if he'll give it up that easily. Eden asks if Felix recognizes him as a rival, but Felix says he has to try harder because it's not up to him. He recalls Joffrey crying and asking why they had come to this stupid place instead of a picnic, claiming that the stupid adults didn't realize how long he had waited and ran away. The Viscount and his wife were surprised at this reaction, Alk saying that the boy must have just been upset. The two brothers said they would go get him. As they were wandering through the woods trying to find their brother, they suddenly heard sobs. Pulling back a bush, Felix asked if Joffrey was there. The boy saw his brother with the golden-haired lady. Rhaena argued that the boy shouldn't be so worried because they were his family. After that, the guys approached, and Eden said that the boy was giving them trouble. The main character asked if they knew the boy. The brunette is sitting at the table, and during the meal, he remembers how he told his brother that he would have to try to take his fiancée away from him. He thinks that he was so confident about it, even though it concerns him, but the guy has gotten out of the situation quite well. If everything goes like that, it will be fine. Near Felix appears devilish looking, very similar to Lloyd. He asks what if in the future the girl's smile will be addressed to someone other than him. The guy is afraid and keeps telling himself about it. The blonde keeps saying that Felix wouldn't have acted if it weren't for Eden and Cornwall. He was worried about Rhaena, but he never would have approached her first. And then he would have just regretted those days and suffered. The brunette stabs his fork on the table. He has forgotten that he is having a meal with his family. He realizes the situation he is in and thinks he has gotten too carried away. He claims that it was just a fly, but his brothers realize that he has gone back into his thoughts. They ask Togo not to forget that he is at the dinner table. Felix apologizes and looks at his bride-to-be. Rhaena asks if he's okay. Felix realizes that compared to when the girl was with her past family, things are much better now, and now she is not alone and cannot worry or fret. He wishes that Rhaena would be by his side, as she is now only happy and smiling. Brunette thinks that if he makes a little more effort from now on, then she'll love him too. Rhaena tells the guy to take his time when eating. Later, Evely invites her sons over for tea. She asks why they both left the girl alone. The boys claim that she is no longer a child, but the Viscountess does not agree with this. She says that even if the girl is not a child, she is a neglected child. She asks if her sons can imagine what that innocent girl went through in that family. Felix claims that Rhaena tried to figure it out on her own. If they keep forbidding her to do things on her own, they won't protect her. They'll only make it worse. To get rid of the past, Rhaena needs to become more confident. That's why he let her go. But sooner or later, she will cross paths with something like this again. Evely asks if he proposes to leave the girl alone and if it's too rash. The guy says that if something like that happens, they shouldn't get involved. He suggests they go to Green Lake. The dispenser couple jump up and down and say that on no account will they do that. They will run out of money so soon. The Viscountess claims that the Homewoods may try to harm Rhaena in some way. According to her son, they should lay low, but if something happens, it's better to solve the problem together. Guy asks what the difference is between them and argues that Rhaena should not only get over the past, but also recognize that the Homewoods are no longer her family. He asks if it would hurt to give up something you're so passionately defending. Evely says that's why they all have to be with the golden-haired lady. She and her father are trying to give her as much support as possible. The Viscountess claims that she just wants the girl, who has always relied on herself, to know that she is not alone in the world and that there are those who wish her well. Felix asks if that's selfish. Even though they are doing it for her good, aren't they forcing it on her? If this house is going to oppress Rhaena as well, then how are they different from the Homewood family? Guy asks not to forget that the golden-haired lady was not here by choice at all. The Viscountess wakes up the protagonist. The girl asks if she slept long. Putting her hand on the bed, she notices a bouquet of flowers near her. She asks if her mother brought it, but Evely replies that it is a bouquet from Felix. She claims that white tulips are very popular during the Festival of Forgiveness. Wear a flower to give if they want to apologize for something. The golden-haired lady holds the bouquet in her hands. She sees that there is one tulip for each offense. The girl hugs the bouquet and notices that when you touch it, it looks like a cloud or cotton candy. The girl remembers eating cotton candy with Felix and blushes a little. The Viscountess remembers that the two went to the festival. It seems their relationship has gotten better. Evely wonders if she should say she's happy for them. She asks Raina if she wants to see another gift, this one from her. The woman claps her hands and a servant brings a box with a gift. A golden-haired lady opens a box and sees a gorgeous dress in it. Evely asks if the girl likes the dress. The protagonist clutches the fabric in her hands and says she loves it. The woman strokes her daughter on the head and says to get ready soon. After all, this will be the girl's first ball. As Eden escorts Raina in the carriage, he says that the Leventia Palace is a unique place. It opens once during the Feast of Forgiveness. The boy says it's great that her first ball will be held in such a place. He tells his companion to descend carefully when they get out of the carriage. The main character asks Eden if she looks good. The girl is wearing a soft pink dress with delicate lace on her legs. She says it's just her first time in such an outfit. Eden understands what Raina means and states that the golden-haired lady looks amazing. He says he's glad he got to see her first in that outfit. The main character thinks this is great because she wanted to look good for him too. A few minutes ago, the Duke of Cornwall had asked Felix what was the matter, where his fiancée had disappeared, for it had been 2 hours already. But the brunette says to whoever is talking, because Lloyd sent him a letter saying that Nisa is not a bad place to spend a summer weekend. Nisa is the dispenser residence. The deciphering of the letter was that the Duke had something to discuss and asked his friend to come early. The guy claims that sending such letters gets on his nerves. Because of this, he barely caught the sleeping image of his future bride. He asks if the Duke is really going to help him. Lloyd claims his friend doesn't understand, and yet he does everything for them. The guy suggests we just talk about it. Suddenly, Raina's older sister approaches them and greets the Duke. The girl says that she hopes the celebration of this feast will also be passed on to his grace. Lloyd notices that his friend has grown darker with Roxy's arrival. The Duke does take the girl's hand and calls her by her last name, saying they've seen each other recently. Raina's older sister says he can just call her Roxy. She says that the charming image of Mr. Duke not only complements this celebration in Leventia, but also makes the Palace of Lethe an even more beautiful place. Felix is alarmed. He thinks it's all her impudent reverie. The girl dares to speak so cavalierly about the palace where the royal couple lives. How stupid and greedy you have to be, the Duke whispered to Roxy, saying that the girl's words flattered him, but next time he should not be so loud about it. Raina's older sister is all red, trying to calm down. She asks what the Duke is doing there so early, but he replies that he's with Felix waiting for his sister-in-law. Roxy is pissed that the guy is waiting for this dirty girl. While Lloyd tells his friend that he needs to be more honest, Felix asks Togo not to talk nonsense because he already has a headache from it. The girl is pissed off. She remembers that she was brought to her knees with the morning shipment of the jewelry she took from her sister. The Duke says that the girl is Raina's sister after all. He asks what the golden-haired lady was like as a child and if she was as cute as she is now. Roxy replies that, to tell the truth, she didn't really care. The girl says that her sister was so unremarkable, it seemed as if she didn't exist at all. Raina was as quiet as a mouse. The brunette walks up to Roxy with clenched fists and says that's enough. He claims he'd keep his mouth shut if he were the girl. Eden and the main character are walking down the road. The boy claims that his brother said he'd be home early and he must be waiting. The blonde guy's gaze falls on Felix, and he falls silent. The golden-haired lady doesn't understand what happened. She looks that way too and sees her future husband with her older sister. Raina stares at them wide-eyed and wonders to herself why Felix is with Roxy. The golden-haired lady realizes that unlike her, Big Sister has always been charming. While Raina only did the maid's work around the house, that is scrubbing floors and cooking meals. She thinks that now Roxy has taken Felix away from her too. The main character gets very upset, but realizes that this is not a solution, so she pats herself on the cheeks. Eden notices this and is surprised. She calls herself a fool in her mind. The girl remembers how kind her future husband was to her and does not want to give him to her older sister so easily. With a confident look, she claims she won't run away again because this man has called her his bride.